This story was sent to us by one of our subscribers named Daniel Carter. He lives in Charleston, West Virginia. What happened to him still has no logical explanation. Even after years, he says there is only one question that still haunts him every single night. Who was actually calling him that evening? Before we begin, I want to mention that some names have been changed to protect the privacy of the people involved. Everything started during the spring of 2021. At that time, I was studying mechanical engineering at a college in Charleston. My girlfriend, Emily Walker, was attending a different college about 40 minutes away in Point Pleasant. We had been together for almost 7 months. Whenever we wanted some privacy, we met at a small neighborhood park inside a newly built residential community. Most of the houses there were still empty. Very few people visited that park. That was exactly why we loved the place. Sometimes we would sit there for hours talking about our future. Sometimes we would grab dinner afterward at the same diner nearby. It had become our routine. Back then I was also a regular smoker. I never smoked near my apartment because I did not want my roommates to know. So every time I visited Emily, I would smoke a cigarette before meeting her inside the park. Everything between us was going perfectly, or at least that was what I believed. Then one evening, everything changed with a single phone call. It was around 5 in the evening. I had just returned from college and was lying on my bed. I was exhausted and planned to stay home. Just then my phone started ringing. It was Emily. The moment I answered, she spoke before I could even say hello. "Come meet me at the park in 1 hour. I am waiting for you." Something about her voice felt wrong. She sounded cold, emotionless, almost like she was forcing herself to speak. I asked if everything was okay. She stayed silent for a few seconds. Then I said, "Can we meet tomorrow instead? I am really tired today." For another few seconds there was complete silence. Then in a voice that did not sound like Emily at all, she said, "Are you coming? Or should I take her with me?" The call disconnected. For several seconds I just stared at my phone. My heart was beating so fast that I could hear it. I immediately called her back. No answer. Again. No answer. I tried 5 more times. Nothing. I kept telling myself she was probably joking. Maybe she was stressed because her final exams were only a few days away. She had been telling me for weeks that she could barely sleep because of the pressure. That had to be it. At least that was what I wanted to believe. Without wasting another minute, I grabbed my motorcycle keys and left my apartment. I had absolutely no idea that phone call was about to drag me into a nightmare that would change my life forever. The drive to Point Pleasant usually took around 40 minutes. That evening it felt much longer. I could not stop thinking about the way Emily had spoken. Every few minutes I reached into my pocket to check if she had called back. Nothing. The closer I got to the neighborhood, the quieter everything became. Most of the streets were nearly empty. Construction on several homes had stopped months earlier. Half-finished buildings stood in complete silence. Even the streetlights had not switched on yet. The sun was slowly disappearing behind the trees. I parked my motorcycle outside the community and walked toward the park. The place was completely empty. The swings moved gently even though there was almost no wind. I looked around expecting to see Emily sitting on our usual bench. She was nowhere. I immediately called her again. This time the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Still no answer. I kept staring at the screen waiting for her to pick up. Then I felt someone place a hand on my shoulder. I turned around so fast that I almost dropped my phone. Emily was standing right behind me. She did not smile. She did not even blink. She simply looked at me and quietly said, "You took too long." I forced a smile and said, "I have been calling you for the last 10 minutes. Why did you not answer?" She ignored the question completely. Instead, she stepped closer and wrapped both arms around me. Normally, she always hugged me tightly. This hug felt different. Her body was ice cold, even though the evening was warm. I slowly pulled away and looked into her eyes. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded them. Her face was pale. She whispered, "I am under so much pressure. I do not think I can handle these exams anymore." I tried comforting her. I told her everything would be okay. We sat on the bench talking for almost 20 minutes. At least I was talking. Emily barely said anything. She just kept looking past me, as if someone was standing behind my back. Several times I caught her staring toward the tree line outside the park. Every time I turned around, there was nobody there. Then suddenly she grabbed my arm so tightly it actually hurt. She whispered, "Do not turn around. He is watching us." My entire body froze. Slowly I asked, "Who is watching us?" She never answered. Instead she stood up, took 2 quick steps backward, then suddenly shoved me away with surprising force. I stumbled back in complete shock. Emily was now staring toward the far corner of the park. Her breathing had become fast. Her eyes looked terrified. She whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "We have to leave. Right now." I looked toward the corner of the park again. There was nothing there. No people, no animals, no movement. Just an old walking trail disappearing into the trees. I turned back toward Emily. "What happened? Who did you see?" She kept staring in the same direction. Then she slowly shook her head. "Please do not ask me anything. Just get me out of here." There was genuine fear in her voice. I had never seen her like that before. Without arguing, I took her hand and we walked out of the park. The entire time she stayed unusually close to me. Every few seconds she looked over her shoulder, almost as if she expected someone to follow us. A few minutes later we reached our favorite diner. It was a small place where we had eaten dozens of times before. The bright lights inside immediately made me feel a little better. I thought maybe she just needed food and some rest. We found our usual booth near the window. I ordered burgers and fries for both of us. Emily quietly stared at the table while we waited. She did not touch her phone. She did not say a single word. Nearly 5 minutes passed in complete silence. Then she suddenly looked up at me with a confused expression. "Daniel, what are we doing here?" I laughed nervously. "Very funny. You wanted to leave the park, remember? So I brought you here." She frowned. "What park? I never went to the park today." For a second I thought she was joking. I smiled. "Emily, stop messing with me. You literally called me an hour ago." She slowly shook her head. "Daniel, I had been at my apartment all afternoon. You texted me saying you were coming to see me. Then you suddenly showed up outside and asked me to come get dinner." I felt every hair on my arm stand up. I grabbed my phone, opened the call history. There it was, her number, an incoming call almost 1 hour earlier. I showed it to her. She looked at the screen, then looked back at me. "Daniel, I never called you." The food arrived. Neither of us touched it. For the next several minutes we sat there staring at each other, trying to understand what had just happened. Finally Emily rubbed her forehead. "I have the worst headache. Everything feels blurry. It is like I am forgetting something important." I told her not to worry. Maybe all the stress from college was affecting her memory. That explanation sounded weak, even to me. After dinner I drove her back to her apartment. Before getting off my motorcycle she looked at me and smiled weakly. "Once my finals are over, everything will be normal again." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But deep inside, something told me, whatever happened inside that park had followed us home. Over the next few weeks Emily's condition only got worse. Some days she sounded completely normal. Then without any warning she would become distant. She would stop replying to messages for hours. When I finally reached her she always had the same answer. I do not remember what happened. At first I blamed the stress from her finals. She barely slept. She skipped meals. She spent most of her time studying. So I kept convincing myself that everything would be fine after the exams. Then something happened that I could not explain. A few days after her finals ended I booked a small hotel room outside the city. We wanted to relax after weeks of studying. Everything felt normal again. We ordered food, watched a movie, laughed about college. For the first time in weeks Emily looked happy. I finally felt like the nightmare was over. Later that night we were lying on the bed talking about summer plans. Without warning Emily suddenly pulled away from me. Her entire body became stiff. She stared toward the bedroom door. "Daniel, please take me home. Right now." Her voice was shaking. I immediately sat up. "What happened? Are you feeling sick?" She pressed both hands against her head. "It hurts. Please, just take me home." I thought maybe she was having a panic attack. I handed her a bottle of water. She drank a few sips but her hands would not stop shaking. I tried calming her down. "You are safe. Nothing is going to happen. Just breathe." She looked straight into my eyes. For a second I thought she was about to tell me something important. Instead she whispered, "He found me again." Before I could ask who she meant, she suddenly covered her head with the blanket, curled into a ball, and within less than a minute, she was completely asleep. Not resting, not pretending, actually asleep. It happened so suddenly that I thought she had fainted. I checked her pulse. It was normal. Her breathing was calm, almost peaceful. Nearly 2 hours later she slowly opened her eyes. She looked around the room, completely confused. "Daniel, why are you staring at me like that?" My stomach dropped. She had no memory. Once again, everything that had just happened had disappeared from her mind. And that was the moment I realized this was no longer stress. Something far more terrifying was happening to the girl I loved. After that night I stopped believing this was just anxiety. Something was changing inside Emily. And whatever it was getting stronger. Over the next month I took her to several doctors. They ran blood tests, brain scans, neurological exams. Everything came back normal. One doctor blamed stress. Another suggested panic attacks. A third recommended therapy. None of it helped. Emily kept getting worse. Sometimes she would wake up with bruises on her arms. She had no idea where they came from. Some mornings she found dirt under her fingernails, even though she had slept inside her apartment all night. Once she called me crying because she woke up wearing different clothes than the ones she remembered falling asleep in. Her roommate insisted Emily had never left the apartment. Nothing made sense anymore. Then summer break began. Emily decided to visit her family in a small town outside Charleston where most of her relatives still lived. Before leaving, she hugged me and smiled. Maybe being with my family will help. Maybe I just need a break. I watched her car disappear down the road. For the first time in weeks, I hoped everything would finally return to normal. We spoke every night over video calls. For the first few days, she looked much happier. She laughed again. She slept better. I started thinking the nightmare was finally over. Then one evening during a call, I casually asked her something she had mentioned months earlier. Emily, you once told me your family never talks about your great aunt. Why? Every time you brought her up, everyone changed the subject. She became strangely quiet. After a few seconds, she nodded. I know. It has always felt strange to me too. When I was little, they told me never to ask about her again. I promised I would try to find out the truth. 2 days later, Emily called me. Her face looked pale. Daniel, something happened today. Grandpa almost died. My heart immediately started racing. What happened? She told me her grandfather had been supervising repairs on one of the old family buildings. Without warning, a large stone had fallen from the roof. It slammed into his shoulder. The worker said, if it had landed just a few inches higher, it would have crushed his skull. Emily kept staring at the screen, then quietly said, Daniel, this is going to sound crazy. But my grandmother looked at him afterward, and the first thing she whispered was, she is still angry. I asked, who is still angry? Emily slowly shook her head. I do not think my family is hiding a secret anymore. I think they are hiding someone. Emily returned to Point Pleasant about 2 weeks later. She looked healthier. She smiled more. She even joked that maybe spending time with her family had finally helped. For a moment, I believed the nightmare was over. A few days later, I rented a quiet cabin outside town. It sat alone in the woods with no neighbors for miles. We planned to spend the night there before classes started again. The evening felt perfect. We ordered takeout, played music, talked for hours. It almost felt like our old life had returned. While we were eating, I casually asked, so, did you ever find out anything about your great aunt? The smile disappeared from Emily's face. Without saying a word, she reached for the speaker. The music stopped. The cabin became completely silent. She slowly stood up from her chair. Her back was facing me. I laughed nervously. Emily, you okay? She did not answer. Instead, she began walking toward the front door. Very slowly, very calmly. I thought maybe she wanted some fresh air. I stood up and followed her. Just before she reached the door, she stopped. Then she slowly turned around. The moment I saw her face, every drop of blood left my body. Her expression was completely different. Her eyes looked darker. Her smile was gone. She was staring at me, without blinking, without moving, for several long seconds. Neither of us spoke. I forced myself to smile. Emily, you are scaring me. Still nothing. Trying to calm her down, I stepped closer and reached out to hug her. The instant my hands touched her shoulders, she shoved me with unbelievable force. My body slammed into the cabin wall so hard that a picture frame crashed onto the floor. I could barely breathe. Emily had never been physically strong. There was no way she could have pushed me like that. She slowly started walking toward me. Each step was slow, controlled, almost unnatural. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone from the floor. Without thinking, I opened the Bible app that my mother had asked me to download years ago. I pressed play on an audio reading of Psalm 9:1. The words filled the silent cabin. The moment the prayer began, Emily froze. She did not move another inch. Her head slowly tilted to one side, as if she was listening to every single word. That was the exact moment I realized whatever was standing in front of me was no longer Emily. I was too terrified to move. The prayer continued playing from my phone. Emily remained completely still. Her eyes never left mine. Then very slowly, she smiled. It was not Emily's smile. It looked cold, almost unfamiliar. My hands were shaking so badly that I accidentally paused the audio. The cabin fell silent again. A deep voice broke the silence. Do not stop it, or I will never leave. The voice did not belong to Emily. It sounded older, calmer, almost like a woman speaking through someone else's body. Every instinct told me to run, but my legs refused to move. I forced myself to speak. Who are you? The woman smiled. I did not come here to hurt you, Daniel. I came because you kept asking questions. Questions your girlfriend was never supposed to ask. I could barely breathe. She slowly walked to the chair across from me, then quietly sat down, folding her hands in her lap, like someone preparing to tell a story. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she looked directly into my eyes. My name is Sarah Walker. I am Emily's mother. The words hit me like a truck. That is impossible. Emily told me her mother raised her. The woman slowly shook her head. The woman she calls her mother is actually her aunt. Emily never knew the truth, because her family buried it, just like they buried me. A chill ran through my entire body. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat there frozen, unable to look away. Sarah continued speaking. Many years ago, I fell in love with a man named Michael Brooks. My family hated him, not because he was cruel, not because he was dangerous. They hated him because they believed he wanted our family's land and money. They gave me one choice: leave him or never come home again. I chose love. We got married. A year later, we had a beautiful baby girl. Her name was Lily. For a while, life was perfect. Then one phone call changed everything. My father called me. He said, "Come home. We miss you. Bring your husband. Bring the baby. It is time to become a family again." I believed him. That was the biggest mistake of my life. Sarah lowered her head for a few seconds. When she looked back at me, there were tears running down Emily's face, but the voice was still Sarah's. We drove to my family's farmhouse that weekend. Everyone welcomed us with open arms. My mother hugged me for several minutes. My father apologized for everything he had said years earlier. Even my brother smiled at Michael. For 2 days, everything felt perfect. We laughed together, shared meals, told old stories. I truly believed my family had forgiven me. On the third night, everything changed. It was just after sunset. The women were inside the house talking. My little daughter Lily was sitting with my mother. Then I heard Michael scream. It was the kind of scream you never forget. I ran outside as fast as I could. Behind the barn, I saw my husband lying on the ground. Blood was everywhere. Someone had stabbed him. He reached his hand toward me, but before I could get to him, I saw my father standing over his body, holding the knife. He looked at Michael with complete hatred. Then he looked at me and said, "I warned you never to bring him back." I screamed and ran toward my father. I wanted to stop him. Before I reached him, something hit the back of my head. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I could not move. I was lying inside a narrow wooden box. There was darkness all around me. I tried screaming. Nobody answered. Then I realized dirt was falling onto my face. They were burying me. I was still alive. I kept pounding against the wood. I screamed until my throat started bleeding. Nobody came. Nobody listened. I died beneath the ground, alone, for years. Daniel, for years I screamed, and nobody heard me. The cabin became completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat. Sarah slowly raised her eyes. Then she whispered something that made my blood freeze. I never left that family, because my daughter was still there. And now, my daughter has finally grown up. She is the girl you know as Emily, and she still has no idea who she really is. I could not process what I had just heard. Every part of me wanted to believe this was impossible, but the woman sitting in front of me knew things that Emily had never told me. She slowly reached for Emily's backpack lying beside the bed. Without looking, she unzipped it, reached inside, and pulled out an old faded photograph. She handed it to me. My fingers were trembling. The picture looked at least 30 years old. A young woman was standing beside a smiling man while holding a baby wrapped in a white blanket. The moment I looked at the woman's face, I forgot how to breathe. She looked exactly like Emily. Not similar, exactly the same. The same eyes, the same smile, even the tiny birthmark near her left eyebrow. I looked up from the photograph. Sarah quietly said, "That baby is Lily, the name your girlfriend was born with. Her family changed it to Emily after they took her away from me. They wanted to erase every memory that I ever existed, but they could never erase me. I stayed with my daughter, every single day, every single year." Then she looked directly into my eyes. "Do you remember the night at the park? The night she kept looking behind you?" I slowly nodded. Sarah continued, "That park was built over land where several people died many years ago. Not all spirits remain asleep. Some of them wandered there after sunset. One of them noticed Emily. It tried to follow her. That is why I forced her to leave. I was protecting my daughter, not frightening her." Suddenly everything started making sense. The strange phone call, the missing memories, the headaches, the fear. It was never random. Sarah had been fighting to keep something else away from Emily. Then her expression changed. The sadness disappeared. Her eyes became cold. "There is only one person left, the one who buried me while I was still breathing. He escaped justice, but he cannot escape forever. I finally understood who she meant. Emily's grandfather. Sarah slowly stood up, looked toward the dark cabin window, then whispered, "His time is almost over. And when that day comes, no prayer, no church, no one will stop me." I felt my chest tighten. I did not know what to say, or what to believe. The room felt colder with every passing second. I finally gathered enough courage to ask, "If everything you told me is true, why are you telling me all this?" Sarah looked at me with an expression that was no longer angry. It almost looked like sorrow. "Because my daughter deserves one person who knows the truth, someone who will never lie to her." Then she stepped closer. "Promise me something, Daniel. No matter what happens between the two of you, never let anyone hurt her. Never let her carry the sins of this family. She has suffered enough." Without thinking, I nodded. "I promise." The moment those words left my mouth, Emily's body suddenly collapsed to the floor. I rushed toward her. She was unconscious. After a few seconds, she slowly opened her eyes. She looked around the cabin in confusion. "Daniel, why are you crying?" I froze. She remembered nothing. Not the conversation. Not Sarah. Not the photograph. Nothing. I looked toward the bed. The old photograph was still lying there. I picked it up. Emily stared at it for a moment, then frowned. "Where did you get this?" "I have never seen these people before." I quietly folded the photograph, placed it back inside her bag, and told her it was nothing important. I never mentioned Sarah again. A few months later, life slowly returned to normal. Emily stopped having the strange episodes. The headaches disappeared. The nightmares ended. We continued dating for almost 2 more years. Then life took us in different directions. We eventually broke up peacefully. A year later, I heard that Emily had gotten married. She looked genuinely happy, and honestly, that was all I ever wanted for her. As for me, I still think about that night inside the cabin. Sometimes I wake up after hearing the exact same sentence from my dream. "Do not stop the prayer, or I will never leave." I still have the old photograph. I have never shown it to anyone, except all of you today, because maybe someone out there knows what really happened to Sarah Walker. And if they do, then perhaps her soul can finally find the peace it was denied for so many years. So this is the story. Follow Nightmare Files for more true horror stories.